So AEW has the Casino Gauntlet match, and I said to myself that, who should honestly win this match? And I also want to see a successful cash in because with AEW, I do not want to see them do the Feast or Fire thing. Because when you remember TNA wrestling, when they had the Feast or Fire, usually they would do things like they would have somebody win the X Division, the tag team, but when it came to the heavyweight championship, they rarely had people win. And then also you did something one year where Scott Steiner stole the championship from Petey Williams, and then he lost his championship match against like Samoa Joe or somebody like that. Because honestly, if you want to establish the gauntlet, the Casino Gauntlet match, you have to have people actually win and be successful. Because why would anybody want to go through all that work not to win? For example, like when people talk about the Royal Rumble, there's been a pattern of people losing. Why would I want to participate in the Royal Rumble knowing that I'm going to lose? So, with that said, I would hope that anybody that I suggest should have a successful cash in. So I want to go over 5 people. That my first person should be Darby Allin, and that's a controversial choice, and that's the reason why I want to do that because a lot of people think that Darby Allin is going to be the AEW champion, and it would be something that people talk about. And it would be a little bit of like a shock value type of thing. Like, okay, well, this guy's been gone for like 8 months really. So it is going to cause a reaction to people. He's going to either get over or he's going to get over as a he's going to get over as a babyface or get over as a heel really. And a lot of people think that he's going to be a champion. So it's ultimately like saying, what direction is AEW going to go in by having Darby Allin hold this? And I also think another thing that happens is Darby Allin is a babyface. So he may do the Rob Van Dam thing, and he may be like saying, I'm a risk taker, so I'm not going to ambush, John Moxley. I'm not going to ambush Hangman Adam Page. I'm going to save this for the right moment and the right time. So I really think that would be, his approach. The next person, and I don't agree with this, would be Will Ospreay or Swerve Strickland. I'm going to put them in the box together because the problem is that Will Ospreay, it would work because a lot of people want to see him be champion, and a lot of people would be happy with that. But the problem is that you see him on the Forbidden Door poster. So a lot of people are going to say, oh, well, Captain Obvious, he's going to do the Rob Van Dam thing and say, hey, we're going to have a full match. I'm not going to ambush you. So that does feel a little predictable. And Swerve, same exact thing. Like it would be predictable if he wins. But also the other thing about Swerve and Ospreay is that they're facing the Young Bucks. So they're also good options because people love them, and that could lead to something. So I would just say like the 3 other people would be Brody King. And with Brody King, a lot of people like Brody King, and he does, and I think that he's ready to be a heavyweight champion. And I know a lot of people may say like, why do you say that? Because he's one thing that a lot of the champions are. He's a big man. And in AEW, what happens to a lot of wrestlers that are big men is that, they're either in tag teams or they're not featured that well. So you can kind of say, hey, well, going into the next year, we can have big men wrestlers. And then also, too, if Moxley wins, then you have Brody King come down and whoop his ass a bit. And then you see, like, Claudio and you see, like, Brody King whoop his ass a bit. It's going to pop the crowd, really. It would be a big surprise, really. And then if you do something like MJF's mad that he lost and he wants to have a feud with Brody King MJF would be something. Brody King and Bobby Lashley would be something. Brody King and the Don Callis family would be something. So, you could kind of do something where, like, he's either defending it because people are harassing him, or you can kind of make him kind of have some momentum. And then maybe later on in the year, you have Hangman Adam Page as a champion for a long time. And then you can have Brody King versus Hangman, or you can do something like Brody King, where, like, Hangman Adam Page becomes the champion, and then maybe in the future he may have an injury, you make Moxley the champion again, and then Brody King cashes that bitch in and it's just like, we ain't gonna do this. There's stuff that you can kind of do with that. And then also too, Brody King versus Swerve, Brody King versus MJF, Brody King versus Bobby Lashley, Brody King versus Samoa Joe, Brody King versus Powerhouse Hobbs, in a heavyweight picture, the big monster versus everybody really. Like that there's a lot of like, there's a lot of really fresh stuff with that. So I think that he would be a great option. I would also say, and I think that a lot of people would agree that it makes the most sense for MJF to win this, and for a lot of reasons. That number one, the Hurt Syndicate is the most over faction in AEW. The people don't like the Bucks, people don't like the Death Riders. MVP has done a really great job, and AEW's really struggled with factions. So the Hurt Syndicate, they have a purpose, they have a goal. You have MJF, who is a good world champion. He knows how to be charismatic. He knows how to instigate. He just went to MLW, and people are talking about it. So he really has the ability to know how to make himself a champion and a big deal. And he hasn't been champion, and I believe, like roughly, like 2 years. And I also think that this time he will not be doing the fuck off comedy like he was doing with Adam Cole. So I really think that this time it's serious. It's no fucking around. It's no like doing dance offs and whatever type of thing, really. And I think that if he goes that, MVP will just like have Bobby Lashley or whoever like kind of whoop his ass, really. Just to be like, you know what, we're serious. That's who we are, really. But you can do a lot. You can do Mark Briscoe versus MJF. You can do Adam Page versus MJF, Swerve versus MJF, MJF versus Bobby Lashley. MJF versus Powerhouse Hobbs, MJF versus Samoa Joe, MJF versus Mystico, MJF versus Bandito, MJF, versus Anthony Bowens, and MJF has that ability to work with anybody very, very well, really. Because, he knows how to instigate, he knows how to play to it. And then also, too, you need to have, like, more, and as I said, like, what would happen if you do Kyle Fletcher versus MJF? Both of them can speak well on the microphone, and, which faction's better? Anthony Bowens can speak on the microphone, so can MJF. They can play off each other. You can do something like, you can have other wrestlers, too, like, speak on the microphone as well, really. Even like with Bandito and Mystico, they get over with the Spanish audience, so it can inspire them to have more Spanish shows, really. And as I said, I think the big thing they have to do is make sure that if MJF does this, he doesn't jump into like stupid ass comedy, because I think that you need a more serious, this is my spot, this is what I do type of thing, really. He can't jump into dumb comedy and that crap anymore. So I really think that could be something. And you can do Will Ospreay versus MJF Part 3, really. So there's a lot that they can really do with this, So I think that he's the best one. He's probably the most box office one. And then again, if you have Hangman Adam Page win and then MJF cashes in, you can do MJF versus Adam Page at Forbidden Door, or you have the Hurt Syndicate take out Adam Page, and then you set up Will Ospreay and Swerve Strickland versus MJF, really. That could be something. Or you can set up Will Ospreay and MJF at Forbidden Door, and then Swerve versus MJF at All Out. So there's a lot of big matches that you can do. So he's like the best option. I think a wild card would be a fifth option. Would be Kyle Fletcher. Because honestly, with Don Cal's family, I've said this many, many times, they lose way too much, and you need to revamp. And they have so many good wrestlers within that group, really. But the problem is that if Kyle Fletcher wins, it's going to happen at Forbidden Door. That Will Ospreay could be the champion, or he can get close, and then Kyle Fletcher cashes in. And I also feel the problem with Kyle Fletcher is, like I've said before, that his weakness is that, like yesterday when they were having fun with the name Kyle at the show, really, he kind of was hamming it up. He's a heel, so I think that he also falls into the MJF category, where it's almost like, is he gonna be Mr. Funny Man and be like, okay, well, people are saying fuck you, Kyle, god damn it, Kyle, and he's gonna wear like the Kyle from South Park, green hat, really. He seems like he is the person that would do that, really. So I think that part. I don't really trust Kyle Fletcher to take it seriously, but he does have great matches. He is a young wrestler. You can do something like have him use it on the ROH championship, but the problem is why would you do that? Because it would just like if anybody won Money in the Bank in WWE and they won the ECW championship or they won the NXT championship, or they went to TNA and they got the TNA championship. It doesn't really make sense, like the Johnny Cochran Chewbacca thing, so that doesn't really make sense, really. So those are like my best options. I was thinking Anthony Bowens, but I just don't think he's ready yet. And like I said, you have to have successful cash-ins. So I really think that that's kind of like the best thing. These are like the best options, in my opinion. I think number one is MJF. That is predictable, but sometimes predictable is safe. My second best option is Brody King because that would be unpredictable. And then also, and as I said, Darby Allin, it's like a third option, but it's a little predictable. Kyle Fletcher would be good to surprise people. And then, my fifth option, as I said, could be Swerve or Ospreay. I think as another option, you can do Wheeler Yuta. And the reason why I would do Wheeler Yuta is that he gives the championship opportunity to Jon Moxley, or it'll be Wheeler or Claudio, because Wheeler or Claudio would be good options because they can give the championship to Jon Moxley, or you can have Claudio as the AEW champion because he looks believable. But the problem is if you do that, that would piss off a lot of people. Like storyline sense, it would work, but you would piss off a lot of people if you had a continuation of Jon Moxley. Like it has to end at All In, and if they continue it afterwards, it's going to piss off a lot of people. It's going to turn off a lot of people. You went from like 800,000, 700,000 people. You went down to 600,000, 500,000 viewers. If you continue Jon Moxley, it's probably going to go from 500 to 300,000. Like somebody like in that range, really, because everybody's kind of sick with it. The feud hasn't been good. You're running out of ideas. You have to really reestablish your heavyweight championship picture. Like, as I said, the safest option is MJF. The box office option is MJF. But if you want a surprise, I would say Brody King would be the second best option, and also, too, you have to think about legitimate champions. And there's nobody more legitimate than MJF because he's done this before. The second reasonable person would be Brody King because of his physicality, So that's what I have to say about that.